Hi everyone, and welcome to another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours. Today we're once again in the Fairy Falls trailhead parking lot, and we're going to be doing the Fairy Falls trail itself. With me is one of our guides, Tisha. Hi T. And we're going to be doing the first part of the trail by bike, as I've done in the past, and then we'll do the last part where you're not allowed to take your bike on foot. It doesn't really matter when you do the Fairy Falls trail. The parking lot at the trailhead is always full, even though the Park Service expanded the parking lot in 2018. You really need to get here pretty early if you want to try and find a parking spot without too many problems. This is the beginning of October, and the parking lot and the trail was still packed. We're going over the little bridge that goes over the Firehole River, and for the first part of the trail we're going to follow the Firehole River. Ahead of us is the Midway Geyser Basin, and behind us is Old Faithful and the Upper Geyser Basin. That's where the Firehole River is flowing from. There's always a lot of people on the trail between the trailhead and the overlook of Grand Prismatic Spring. You can see that we have another video of the overlook of Grand Prismatic Spring in our virtual Yellowstone Tours channel. It really is a stunning overlook of Grand Prismatic. In the old days, we used to have to walk up that little hill itself, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. But a couple of years ago, the Park Service put a trail in, so you don't have to just walk up the hill. You can now take a trail lap, which does make it a lot easier, although the trail really only goes up about a third of the way up the hill, but it doesn't really matter because you do get pretty stunning views. So this part of the trail is the most popular between the Fairy Falls parking lot, Fairy Falls trailhead parking lot, and the overlook of Grand Prismatic Spring. The reason for that is that there are basically three different trails that you could be doing as you make your way along this section over here. You could be taking the hike to Fairy Falls, you could be taking the much shorter walk to the Grand Prismatic Spring overlook, and that steam that you see in the background is coming off the Excelsior Geyser crater. Or you could also be doing the trail that runs between the Fairy Falls trailhead parking lot and Fountain Flat, which is a reasonably long trail. It's a really pretty trail. Once you get to the other side of the turnoff to Fairy Falls itself, there's not that many people on it, and the scenery really is beautiful. On the right there again, you'll see the steam coming off the Excelsior Geyser crater. Excelsior Geyser used to be an active geyser, but it hasn't erupted for decades, and now it's just known as the Excelsior Geyser crater. Right next to it on the left you can see a little bit of steam coming off as well, and that is Grand Prismatic Spring. We actually have 5 videos in our YouTube channel which incorporate this trail, or at least a bit of it. There's this one that goes to Fairy Falls and then onto Imperial Geyser. There's a second one that goes from the Fairy Falls trailhead to Fairy Falls. A third one travels from Fairy Falls itself to Imperial Geyser. Then there's a fourth video which takes a look at the Grand Prismatic Spring overlook. And the fifth one travels from the Fairy Falls parking lot to the Fountain Flat parking lot. You can check all of them out at virtualyellowstonetours.com. That's virtualyellowstonetours.com. Coming up on the left is the trailhead to the Grand Prismatic Spring overlook. It's not that long, and as I mentioned before, it does have spectacular views. If you're not used to the altitude, you'll find that you may huff and puff a little bit on the way up, but the view is really worth it. And then you'll see there's another trailhead. Oh, and on the right there you'll see Excelsior Geyser Crater. On the left is Grand Prismatic Spring. And I was saying that we will come across another little trailhead, so you can take the first trailhead up and the second one down if you did want to continue on to Fountain Flat or onto Fairy Falls. This section of the trail is really beautiful because you get to see some spectacular views of Grand Prismatic that most people don't get to see because they're on the other side of the of Grand Prismatic. They're on the boardwalks, which you can't quite see from here, but which are on the other side of Grand Prismatic Spring itself. Coming up on the left is the trailhead that I mentioned a moment ago, where you can come down, or for that matter go up if you prefer, depending on which way you're going, to and from the Grand Prismatic Spring overlook. And don't be surprised if you come across the occasional water hazard. There's water all over the place coming off Grand Prismatic Hot Spring and the various other thermal features in the area. I wonder if we shouldn't go around the other way too. And we're pretty much at the point where you have to leave your bikes anyway. When you're doing the Fairy Falls Trail, you're not allowed to take your bikes on that section. So we're going to leave them over here. There's Grand Prismatic, that's Excelsior Geyser Crater. That's Grand Prismatic over there. That's Tisha and her bike. Okie doke. As previously mentioned, we have now reached the turnoff to Fairy Falls itself. That trail there goes back to the Fairy Falls parking lot. That trail over there heads off towards the Fountain Flat parking lot. That over there is Excelsior Geyser Crater, Grand Prismatic Spring. That's T again. And there's the sign that tells us Fairy Falls, 1.6 miles. So, let's do this. Really is a delightful day to be out in the backcountry. As I always mention to you, make sure that you have your bear spray with you. T, do you have your bear spray? Outstanding. You never know when you may come across a bear out in the wilderness. I tend to leave mine with the safety off. There's still quite a bit of smoke around. Some of it's come up from California. Other of the smoke is from the Lone Star fire, which is burning a short distance to the southwest of Old Faithful. In fact, let me drop in a map so you can see where this trail is. If you take a look at the map, and you'll see that the roads through the park make up a massive figure of 8. And companies like ours, as I've told you many times before, divide their tours of the park into a tour of the lower loop of the figure of 8 and a tour of the upper loop of the figure of 8. Well, if you have a look at the lower loop of the figure of 8, you'll see where Madison Junction is, on the left or west side of the map, and you drop down a little, so you go a little bit to the south, you'll see that's where the main geyser basins are. You'll first see the lower geyser basin and then the Midway Geyser Basin. And after the Midway Geyser Basin, you'll see a little icon denoting a trail. That's the Fairy Falls parking lot. And that's the more popular location at which to start this hike. You could also start it at Fountain Flat, which isn't generally shown on the map, but it is to the north of the lower geyser basin. Well, actually it's to the north of both the lower geyser basin and the Midway Geyser Basin, but it's a lot further to access the Fairy Falls turnoff from the trail between the Fairy Falls parking lot and the Fountain Flat parking lot. So most people, if not all people, except for locals, will park at the Fairy Falls parking lot and then walk, or as the case of Tisha and I, we took our bicycles. I'm actually quite looking forward to this today. Not only is it a beautiful October day, temperatures probably in the upper 40s, lower 50s, so about 10 or 11 degrees Celsius. So it's a little bit crisp, but just a wonderful day to be out taking a short and easy hike. Unlike the Mystic Falls hike, which you can see in our virtual Yellowstone tour in our YouTube channel as well. This one really, to all intents and purposes, is pretty flat. There is a new section that has been added onto this trail, which I'm really looking forward to. It's about a half-a-mile section from what I can see, from Fairy Falls to Imperial Geyser and then on to Spray Geyser. That was put in 2017. I've never done it, so we can take a look at it together on this virtual Yellowstone tour. One of the interesting things about this trail, as you may have noticed already from the young growth lodgepole pines and the odd snag every now and again, is that this Fairy Falls trail area was pretty significantly burnt by the Great Fire of 1988. I won't go into a lot of detail here about the Great Fire of 88. I talk about it in other of our virtual Yellowstone tours. But it really was a seminal event here in Yellowstone, and it burnt this entire area. And what we're seeing now is the lodgepole pine trees that have grown after that fire. The lodgepole pines have cones that really take a lot to get them open. See a couple of small ones growing there. It takes a lot of strength or a lot of heat to get them open, and that's what the Great Fire of 88 did. It provided the source of intense heat, and it enabled the pine cones to burst open, and thereby spraying seeds all over the place and germinating, seeding a new forest. In addition, the fire obviously charred the soil, thus making it a lot better for the lodgepole pines to grow. I mentioned this is October, but if you come here in the end of June, sometime in July, that's when we get our spring flowers. And this place is really ablaze in color.
Давай так, наша friendly group.
Can you hear the noise from kids screaming at the falls?
A little bit.
Whenever I do one of these videos, there's always a bunch of children around.
That's good.
Good.
How y'all doing?
Good, how are you? Good. Thank you. Thank you. Hi. Hi.
How's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
Great, thanks.
Good. Hi. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
How's it going?
Tea, are we almost there?
I think so. Seems like there should be a falls around here somewhere close.
Yeah, we're not too far away. That up there is the Madison Plateau, and Fairy Creek comes tumbling over the Madison Plateau to create Fairy Falls. There are quite a few snags over there, aren't there?
She's fun to, to do things. But she just needs to find people.
Hi. Can you hear the sound of the water? And there's our first view of Fairy Falls. You may have heard me mention a few minutes back that that up there is what's called the Madison Plateau. It's about 200 feet above us, and Fairy Falls comes down 197 feet from the point that it's dropping to the top until the bottom. That's about 61 meters. Fairy Falls was given its name by the Hague Party, which is one of the original exploratory and surveying parties that was here in the 1880s. They called that stream up at the top Fairy Creek. They felt this was such a beautiful and sublime sight, they named it Fairy. There's not that much water coming out at the moment, as you might expect, because this is October, so there's very little in the way of snowmelt, only the very, very recent snow, and there hasn't been very much of it. But if you come here in the spring, there's a lot more water. As I mentioned earlier, there's a relatively new section of trail that the National Park Service put in from here at Fairy Falls to Imperial Geyser. If all that you wanted to see was the Fairy Falls section of the trail, well then, thank you so much for joining me on another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours. If you'd like to see the section of trail up to Imperial Geyser, well, then continue watching and we'll do it together.
Hey, again, get back to the picture. Everybody back there. Right now, quick. While we're moving in. Quick, quick.
So this is the trail that I've never been on, I think this is the one that was put in 2017. We saw some steam coming up above the trees over there. And so it's very likely this is the trail that's going to take us to Imperial Geyser. And then just a short distance down, a little creek from Imperial is supposed to be Spray Geyser. Pretty darn damp. Oh dear. There goes my foot, sopping wet now. And that is both feet absolutely sopping wet. How about you, T?
No, I'm good.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Well, do you want to go first then?
I don't know. You can't trust me at the next one.
Memo to the National Park Service. Put some rocks or trees or something on top here. T, wait. Why don't you go back and let's take a shot of that, of you tiptoeing through the mud.
You
Yeah.
just want me to get my socks wet. Woo.
Outstanding. Good job, T. Well, we now have another sound effect for this part of the video. My foot sloshing in the mud that's in my shoe. Teach me a lesson to wear sneakers instead of hiking boots. You brought white shoes?
Yeah, these are my Adidas. Okay.
There's barely any mud on them.
They've been through all kinds of situations. They are good shoes. Hello.
Hi guys. What a great place to have lunch.
It's a great place to have lunch. You guys have bear meat, don't you?
Yes. Good. Because we were here hiking a couple months ago and a woman got attacked on this hike.
Oh.
So for real. Yeah, we were lucky we were picking this trail or we decided to do one by lake. So we went to the one by lake and we heard a mama grizzly like really close to us growling at her baby bear. But then when we were on our way home, we read that a woman here on this hike did have an encounter and had to use her bear mace.
Oh, did
What?
she make it?
She made it.
Oh,
Yeah, it
good.
ran away. So
Lucky she had it.
Heads up, so it's good.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi there.
Oh.
You okay?
Best recovery ever.
T,
Yeah.
would you do that again and let me take a picture of it this time?
I was falling for like 50 feet.
In case you can't see that, it says Ferry Falls to our left, 0.4 miles, 0.6 k's, Fountain Flats Drive, which I mentioned here is another place where we could start this trail, 1.9 miles or 3 k's, and then Imperial Geyser, which is where we're headed now, 0.3 miles and 0.5 or half a kilometer. Biscuit Basin, interestingly enough, is 10.2 miles and 16.3 k's. I noticed on the Mystic Falls Trail as well that the Park Service had, actually I don't think it was Biscuit Basin they had signs for. I think it was Ferry Falls, which was about 15 miles away when you were at the top approaching the Biscuit Basin overlook. Gosh, beautiful how this has opened up. And you can see the steam over there. And there is Ferry Falls in between those trees. I know we're looking into the sun in between those snags, excuse me. This is one of the things that is so cool about Yellowstone. You can be all by yourself, away from the crowds, in such a short period of time. Let me show you what's here. So over there is where there's some steam coming off. Otherwise, here's this meadow, there's the Madison Plateau, and we're completely by ourselves. So this, I would imagine, and this is only a guess, is a loop. I would guess one side goes to Imperial perhaps, and the other one, Imperial Geyser, and the other one goes to Spray Geyser. You got any thoughts on that, T?
That one looks closer.
It does look closer, but we're going to do both. Unless you're really tired.
Okay.
I believe there's a stream that runs from Imperial Geyser to Spray Geyser. So think of this as a big triangle or a big circle. And Tisha, by the way, has just come out of quarantine for COVID. How are the lungs feeling, T?
They're feeling very good, thank you.
For real?
Yeah. Yes. You just have to sleep a lot to get over COVID, so your muscles get weak.
Yep.
But that's it.
Well, glad you were able to make it up.
Yeah, me too.
Can you smell the sulfur now?
My sense of smell hasn't totally returned.
Isn't it? Look through the trees. Can you see the center?
Yes, I can see the center.
So we're clearly near a thermal area, or where a thermal area was. Well, if you can, well, you can't smell the sulfur, but with that very strong smell, it would seem to indicate there must be some active thermal feature around here. It sounds like water as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. The forest floor is much more green back here.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
The trees also look higher here. What do you think? I mean, consider that the Great Fire was in '88, so that's 32 years ago. I would think this is more than 32 years growth.
They look thick and lush.
Should we just take a quick detour, see what the center's about? Oh, there you go. And it's erupting. I think this is Imperial. It's- See, there's a trail over here.
We're waiting for our house to be built up in Florida.
Oh, yes, that's where the rich people live.
Thank God. We're not in the wrong spot. But anyway, we're both born in Idaho Falls. So we went to Idaho for high.
I think I may have a new favorite bacteria mat in the park.
That's a funny way of thinking of it.
Well, don't you think that the bacteria mats that come off Sapphire Pool at Biscuit Basin are just stunning?
Oh yeah. Well, so many. It's really hard to rank them all.
I mean, just look at what was coming off over there, off Imperial. Now there's a lot of algae growing.
Do you think this is where it used to run down?
No, don't you think that's the runoff over there? I wonder if that is Spray Geyser. You good, or you want to take a break?
Oh no, I thought we were gonna wait for it to erupt. I'm good.
And this is where the trail split, where T wanted to go the one way and I wanted to go the other way. Thank you so much for joining me on another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours. If you enjoy our virtual Yellowstone tour series, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Otherwise, I hope you make it to Yellowstone someday.